So, it's been almost a year since our glorious King Naruto was sealed away in the Daikokuten, a dimension separate from the dimension that Earth exists in, controlled and created by the likes of Ishiki and now Kawaki. And all of it is powered from the Dharma Wheel-esque dojutsu that Ishiki and now Kawaki wield. And while this upcoming February will mark 1 whole year since Naruto was sealed away, in the time since Naruto's sealing, we've only actually seen about 5 chapters of Boruto, as Boruto went on a little hiatus after the completion of Chapter 80 before they started Two Blue Vortex. However, in these 5 to 5.5 chapters since Naruto was sealed, there's been no indication of anybody trying to save it. In fact, the only time that we've seen Naruto and Hinata floating in the Daikokuten is when Kawaki went to go visit them, which happened in Chapter 1 of Two Blue Vortex, before Code and a bunch of Claw Grimes attacked Konoha. Now, the reason that nobody tried to make any moves to save Naruto and Hinata is kind of complicated. 1, it's incredibly tough, if not impossible, to get to the Daikokuten without Kawaki's assistance. And 2, there's kind of more pressing matters, as obviously Naruto was sealed away in, I believe, Chapter 79 of Boruto. Since then, the entire world has been brainwashed to believe that Boruto killed his parents and that Kawaki is Kawaki Uzumaki, son of Naruto and Hinata. Code has created a standing army of Claw Grimes that now have sentience, and if they bite somebody, they create a thing known as a Divine Tree, or a Shinju as I call them, that are apparently as powerful as maybe Kaguya. And oh yeah, one of those Shinjus is manifestation of the Claw Grime that bit Sasuke. And thus, with the opening of Two Blue Vortex, saving Goth Dad is a bit more important than saving Golden Retriever Dad, because Goth Dad is currently manifesting an insanely powerful, possibly malevolent being that has all of his abilities, chakra, and maybe personality. That is to say, in less complicated terms, that Sasuke, after getting bit by a Claw Grime and growing into a tree, manifested, like every other person who's ever been bitten by one of Code's Claw Grimes, a Shinju. And those Shinju are insanely powerful. So we gotta take care of them first before the Claw Grimes bite more people and create an army of possibly Kaguya level threats. There's also the possibility that the more time that Sasuke spends in the tree, the lower the chance that Boruto, Kashin Koji, and the rest of their friends have of eventually saving him, as it wouldn't be crazy to assume that as one spends more time in a malformed divine tree, more of their life force is sapped out of them. It's kind of the purpose of divine trees. But just because Sasuke is currently priority number 1 doesn't mean that there's no prospective plans on how to save Naruto. And in fact, the first thing that Boruto, Kashin Koji, and friends will probably try to do after saving Sasuke in this upcoming arc will be saving Naruto. However, while we now have a rough outline on how one would go about saving Sasuke or anybody who was bitten by a Claw Grime painted for us by Chapter 4, which is simply if you cut down their Shinju manifestation, there's an okay chance that they'll fall out of their tree, possibly better than they were before. So saving the likes of Sasuke and Soegi and Moegi is actually fairly simple. All you gotta do is kill those incredibly powerful Shinju manifestations, and once they're dead, the people who manifested them should be safe again. It's at least what we currently believe. There's obviously been no confirmation of this, but we at least have some evidence to point us in that direction, like the fact that Kashin Koji wanted Boruto to jump Sasuke's Shinju the second that he saw him, and after Boruto was unable to kill Sasuke's Shinju, he went back to Sasuke in the tree and said, sorry, you're gonna have to hold on a little bit longer. So you can see pretty easily how we would jump to the conclusion that if you kill the Shinju, you get the person back. However, as it currently stands, we don't have any of this type of evidence as to how one would go about saving Naruto, unless we actually do. As Chapter 4 not only gave us the answer as to how Boruto and Kashin Koji are going to go about saving Sasuke, but it also, in a much subtler way, might have shown us how Boruto and Kashin Koji are going to go about saving Naruto and Hinata. I feel as though that's important to add. And the answer for how Boruto is going to save his parents lies in the fact that in the beginning of Chapter 4, we see him use Flying Thunder God across dimensions, which has gotten people theorizing that the reason that we were shown Boruto having the ability to use Flying Thunder God across dimensions, the first person to ever do so, was because that's exactly how he'll save his parents. Which is why today we're talking Boruto's Flying Thunder God will save his family. But before we get to talking about anything, guys, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. And if you want to see me do breakdowns in some of your other favorite mangas, guys, go ahead and follow my other channel, The Weeb Commander, where instead of talking Naruto and Boruto, I talk all other anime. And if you want to see me talk about Naruto, Boruto, and all other anime, go ahead and follow my anime podcast, Taku's Anonymous, where me and Danny Mata break down everything happening in anime this week. It's available on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. And if you want to look like somebody who talks about all anime, Naruto and Boruto included, then go ahead and meander on over into my merch store, takusanonymous.net, where you can pick some of the greatest anime t-shirts, sweatshirts, and sticker packs known to man. So, in Chapter 4, it was revealed that Boruto not only knows Flying Thunder God, the jutsu of his grandfather, well, technically the jutsu of the second Hokage, but Minato made it famous, but also he's able to use that jutsu across dimensions. And while this is something that many people speculated was a possibility, myself very much included, it being shown now has raised a couple of eyebrows. Because there's a couple of different ways that Boruto could have gotten to the Kara dimension. Well, obviously, using Flying Thunder God is one of the coolest ways he could have done it. We've already seen that the karma marking has teleportation-like abilities. And therefore, it's a possibility over the last 3 years, Boruto had been mastering his karma marking abilities. And it's also a possibility that he'd been working on his chakra sensing. And thus, by finding the chakra signature of the toad that he placed on Code, he could have opened a space-time ninjutsu portal with his karma marking to go and follow Code. And thus it raises the incredibly logical question, why Flying Thunder God across dimensions now? And considering the fact that on this page we have a coined catchphrase that Kishimoto never does anything for nothing, it's important to look at these kinds of moments and ask questions. Like today I got an email that pointed out the fact that the Kara hideout exists in a separate dimension, and therefore if hypothetically Boruto was bitten by a claw grime in the Kara dimension, it actually wouldn't doom the Earth. Because assuming that the Kara dimension and Earth are different dimensions and therefore not on the same planet, if Boruto were to have been turned into a divine tree at the Kara hideout in chapter 4, that would have just made a divine tree in the Kara hideout, which would have eaten a grand total of what? 6 people? And while it's not the worst thing of all time, that would still be a pretty massive failure for both the Shinju and Code, because not only would you have wasted Boruto and Tsutsuki, but also this divine tree wouldn't eat the chakra of any of the living or dead beings on Earth, with the most important of those dead beings being Shibai, which actually brings up a couple of interesting questions about the reality of Naruto's universe. Does the Kara dimension exist on Earth, but just in a separate dimension? And therefore, if the divine tree were to have grown in the Kara dimension, would it have affected all dimensions of Earth, or would it only have affected the Kara dimension? And could that possibly be why the Shinju decided to not eat Boruto in that moment? I don't know, but I know this topic needs an entire video, because I need to do a deep dive on the possible layers of dimensions that exist in the Boruto universe and cross-reference that against all of the times that somebody has tried to make a divine tree. Because now, off the top of my head, while I'm thinking about it, I believe that Momoshiki also tried to make his divine tree in a separate dimension. I got questions, man! Anyways, Boruto traveled between dimensions using Flying Thunder God. Let's reel it in a little bit here. But now that we know that Boruto can travel between dimensions, the way that he's gonna save Naruto seems fairly obvious, right? Simply by placing a marked object or a marked human in the Daikokuten means that Boruto would be able to jump into the Daikokuten and scoop up his family, right? I mean, if he can hop between Earth's dimension and Kara's dimension, why wouldn't he be able to hop into the Daikokuten? Well, before he could even attempt that, there is a couple of logistical hurdles that Boruto would have to get over, like the fact that he himself does not have access to the Kamui dimension, and thus in order to get these tagged items or humans into the Daikokuten, he would have to force Kawaki to put them there. And there's a couple of fairly believable ways that Boruto could go about to achieve this outcome, with the first possible way being what I call the Konan approach. See, the Konan approach is called the Konan approach because it's based off the time that Konan battled against Obito, and specifically how Konan was basically able to nullify Obito's Kamui. You see, Konan understood that if she overwhelmed Obito with a mass amount of paper, that he would try to absorb it using his Kamui. However, because she understood that Obito would try to absorb all of this paper away and nullify her attack, she decided to, amongst this massive onslaught of paper, mix in paper bombs. And since these paper bombs were mixed in throughout the entirety of her paper, at one point or another, as Obito was Kamuiing all of this paper into the Kamui dimension, a paper bomb would explode close to his face. Now, this technically was a Shinju-esque attack from Konan, because in order for this to work, it would also cost Konan her life, as Konan is made of her paper, and as she was sucked into the Kamui dimension, she was going to explode her body with paper bombs to also take Obito out. However, Obito, being a shinobi of the highest order, was able to identify before the paper bombs could go off in a way that would kill him that there was paper bombs amongst all the paper, and thus he turned off his Kamui and expelled the paper out of the Kamui dimension, saving his and Konan's lives, though it did cost him his right arm. And Konan's idea of using paper bombs as a defense against Obito worked so well that Kishimoto had to invent Izanagi to get around it. Like, that's how good Konan's strategizing was, that Kishimoto had to invent an ability that almost destroyed his universe. However, fortunately for Boruto, Kawaki is not a shinobi, and definitely not a shinobi anywhere as good as Obito. And therefore, Kawaki isn't well versed in how shinobis fight, which, if you haven't been paying attention, is heavily reliant on trickery and deception. Things like genjutsu, the substitution technique, the clone technique, transformation techniques. All of these things are tools in a shinobi's arsenal that they use to trick and deceive their enemies, so that they can close the distance and land a killing blow against their enemy. But Kawaki, who's kind of just a walking human shotgun, doesn't necessarily understand the delicacy and intricacy of a ninja's battle. And therefore, if hypothetically him and Boruto were to come into contact and Boruto were to throw marked kunai at him that he was unable to dodge, he wouldn't think twice about warping those kunai kunai into the Daikokuten. And really, why should he? Kawaki doesn't understand Flying Thunder God. All he understands is that Boruto disappeared after his battle against Ko. And so far as Kawaki knows, he doesn't even know if Boruto's responsible for his own disappearance. Flying Thunder God hasn't been around since Naruto's birth. There's no reason that anybody outside of Boruto and those who fought alongside Minato or in the Fourth Great Shinobi World War would know anything about it. And thus almost the entirety of the new generation is going to be completely clueless to all things FTG. Not to mention that Kawaki saw Ishiki and Jigen use the Daikokuten in pretty much every way imaginable. Jigen used the Daikokuten to seal away things like new dining tables for the Kara hideout should one ever be destroyed, glasses of red wine. Pretty much anything that Jigen or Ishiki ever thought would be convenient sometime down the line, they stored in the Daikokuten. And thus there's really no reason for us to believe that Kawaki is using it any differently. However, Boruto doesn't even have to get that tricky, because here's the thing. If Boruto himself were to go to the Daikokuten, there's a possibility he would be able to scoop up his parents and use Flying Thunder God to bring them all out of the Daikokuten. And when you consider the fact that the opening of Boruto is literally Kawaki telling Boruto, I'm gonna send you where I sent the seventh, the Daikokuten, this possibility does have some legs, as it's been revealed to us that when Boruto and Kawaki finally start throwing bows for real, Kawaki's primary strategy is going to be containing Boruto, not killing him. And therefore some people have been speculating that when we finally get to this moment that we saw in Chapter 1 and Episode 1 of Boruto, Kawaki will be successful in sending Boruto to the Daikokuten. However, because Boruto can use Flying Thunder God between dimensions, after being sent to the Daikokuten, he'll scoop up his family and travel back to Earth. Much like how Kakashi was able to return from the Kamui dimension after he was dropped off there. However, there's kind of one problem with this theory as a whole, and that stems from the reason as to why Kawaki wants to send Boruto to the Daikokuten. You see, the Daikokuten, and this seems to be something that people have forgotten, is a timeless dimension, similar to the prison realm in JJK, which means the second you get sealed into this dimension, time stops moving for you. Naruto and Hinata have not aged a second since being sealed. And this is why Jigen and Ishiki were able to seal things like glasses of red wine in this dimension, because Jigen could simply pour himself a glass of red wine, put it in the Daikokuten dimension, and then reach back into the Daikokuten dimension to get it back, and it would be as he just poured it. Now, unfortunately, with timeless dimensions, there's a couple more rules outside of the fact that time doesn't move. See, the classic trope for anime timeless dimensions is that you also can't move in them. Because think for a second, if time froze. If time was frozen for you completely, you wouldn't be able to move. And thus, this is why Naruto and Hinata have been in the same position for the last 3 years. They can't move, breathe, talk, or really do anything in the Daikokuten. Because while this is infinitely argued in all scaling communities, if one is able to move in a timeless dimension, that might imply they have infinite movement speed, as you are going somewhere in 0 time. Now, as to whether or not you decide to believe that, I don't know. That's up to you. I genuinely don't care. But since Naruto and Hinata don't have infinite movement speed, they've been stuck. Which means if, hypothetically, Boruto was to teleport himself into the Daikokuten, which he could absolutely do, and like very easily, mind you, the second he teleported into the Daikokuten, he would be frozen. It doesn't matter if he teleported into the Daikokuten super fast with his kunai, grabbed Naruto and Hinata, and teleported out. The second you go into the Daikokuten as a person not named Kawaki, Ishiki, or Jigen, you are frozen. There's no couple second window in timeless. The rules of the dimension don't wait to apply to you until you're nice and comfortable. Okay, so we've established the fact that Boruto could use Flying Thunder God to enter the Daikokuten, but definitely shouldn't, which raises the logical question, does he know he shouldn't? Because here's the thing, Boruto does know that Kawaki sealed away his parents, and he is aware that they currently exist in the Daikokuten. However, Kawaki never reveals to Boruto that he's sending them to a timeless dimension. It's simply revealed to Boruto that Kawaki sealed away his parents in a separate dimension, and therefore we're gonna see Boruto entering into combat against Kawaki with the explicit idea of trying to jump into the Daikokuten? Probably not. But what's gonna stop him from trying to do this anyways? Well, once again, to use our catchphrase that Kishimoto never does anything for nothing, let's take a quick walk back to chapter 48, where Kashin Koji was responsible for killing Jigen and awakening Ishiki. And when Kashin Koji and Ishiki's battle reaches the height of its intensity, with Kashin Koji spawning the true flames of Samadhi behind Ishiki and then coming in above him with a massive Rasengan, forcing, he believes, to either have Ishiki choose between burning to death or being crushed by the Rasengan, Ishiki instead decides to choose option C, which is reach into the Daikokuten, grab one of the pillars that he had stored in there, and nail Kashin Koji to the ground. However, what happens after this moment is interesting, because after Ishiki uses Daikokuten against Kashin Koji, he begins to go on a somewhat long diatribe about how Daikokuten works, which was kind of odd. Because one, I believe previously to chapter 48 in the manga, it had already been revealed to the audience how the Daikokuten worked, and thus the act of Ishiki explaining how the Daikokuten works to Kashin Koji serves us as an audience no real purpose. See, because there's two reasons that a character in a fictional universe begins to explain their motives or how their abilities work. One is so us, the audience, understands what their motivations or abilities are, and two is so the person that they're fighting against also understands. However, if prior to this moment Ishiki had explained how Daikokuten works, that means that he's not explaining it for us, but instead he's explaining it for Kashin Koji, which is weird because usually explanations about abilities and motives are mostly for both parties simultaneously, and you very rarely see a bad guy re-explain how his technique works or his motivations simply so that a character in the universe understands, because it's repetitive to the most important party in all of this, us, the reader. Now, I could technically be misremembering the fact that Ishiki at some point or another does explain how the Daikokuten works prior to his battle against Kashin Koji. However, even if I am, the fact that Ishiki decides to explain how Daikokuten works to Kashin Koji and nobody else is interesting, because here's the thing. Daikokuten is used dozens of times prior to Ishiki's death. He uses it against Naruto, Sasuke. He uses it when Delta destroys the table in the Kara hideout. He uses it against Kashin Koji. So the fact that Kashin Koji would be selected as the person to receive information about how Daikokuten works is done for a reason. And that reason is because one day Naruto and Hinata are going to be sealed in the Daikokuten, and there's going to be one person outside of the person who sealed them in the Daikokuten who has the ability to get to the Daikokuten. However, them having that ability isn't necessarily a good thing. In fact, if that character who not only has the motivation but the ability to get to the Daikokuten tries to get to the Daikokuten, they would be sealing their fate. And Kashin Koji would eventually become the sensei of that one person with the motivation and the ability, Boruto. And therefore, Boruto won't even try to use Flying Thunder God to get into the Daikokuten because Kashin Koji understands that it's a timeless dimension, because Ishiki exposition dumped onto him. Think about it. How necessary is it for Ishiki to tell Kashin Koji that the Daikokuten allows him access to a timeless dimension? Why include the timeless bit? It's not like Ishiki is pulling out a haunch of meat that he stored there 3 years ago and taking a bite out of it. The context of this conversation is that Ishiki has just pulled out giant stone pillars that were once in the Kara hideout and used them to pin Kashin Koji to the ground. Those stone pillars wouldn't be affected by the couple of years that they've been sitting in the Daikokuten, and thus Ishiki deciding to tell Kashin Koji that he has access to a timeless dimension is so for down the line Kashin Koji can stop Boruto. And thus, while Boruto does have the ability to get to the Daikokuten, he would have to, once he gets there, find a way to move in a timeless dimension, which either he might be able to do because he's so speedy, or he might be able to do it because he's able to nullify the powers of the Daikokuten through some karma nonsense. And when we consider the fact that in chapter 79 or 80, Boruto absorbed the Daikokuten that Kawaki was trying to wrap him in, Boruto using the karma marking to nullify the powers of the Daikokuten isn't actually all that crazy, as the karma marking has the ability to absorb ninjutsus, and the Daikokuten is just a space-time ninjutsu. So it's a possibility that Boruto would be able to manifest a full-body karma and then jump into the Daikokuten, and therefore, because he's able to absorb ninjutsu, nullify the timeless factor of the Daikokuten. And when you consider the fact that the only reason that Kawaki has access to the Daikokuten is because of his Ishiki karma marking, that gives him access to Ishiki's dojutsu, it's not crazy to assume that Boruto's karma marking that makes him 100% Otsutsuki would grant him the ability to be somewhat immune to the effects of the Daikokuten. However, I believe it is substantially more likely that the way that Naruto and Hinata are going to get out of the Daikokuten, my god, how many times have I said that word today, is that they will be released by the hands of Kawaki. See, well, it would be really cool to see Boruto outplay Kawaki and throw a kunai that Kawaki wraps into the Daikokuten, and then Boruto's like, you fell for my trap, and then jumps into his pocket dimension and saves his parents. And it would be even cooler that when Boruto and Kawaki came to blows, and Kawaki was like, I'm gonna send you where I sent the 7th, he actually does that. But then Boruto pops out like 3 seconds later with his father and his mother who haven't aged a day. I think from a plot and character development perspective, it would make more sense if Kawaki was the person who releases Naruto and Hinata, as it's a possibility that Kawaki, either after a defeat at the hands of Boruto or after an incredibly enriching conversation with Boruto, realizes he either needs the strength of Naruto or that Naruto doesn't need protecting. And that while it's okay to try and protect those that you love, it's important that they have their own autonomy to do so themselves. And thus Kawaki being the person to release Naruto and Hinata is the closing of his character development arc, as he realizes he's been holding on too tightly to the people he loves, and that the people he loves will always be there around for him because they're strong enough in their own right. And the reason that Boruto was able to defeat Kawaki is because he was willing to rely on others, something that Kawaki isn't willing to do, which is a parallel between Kawaki and Sasuke's character development arcs, and considering the fact that Kawaki is the co-antagonist protagonist of this story, it would make sense that Kawaki and Sasuke would have more than a few parallels. However, it is a possibility that Kawaki learns these lessons after Naruto and Hinata are forcibly wrenched from the Daikokuten, as I really don't see it as an impossibility that Naruto is the person who teaches Kawaki the lesson about respecting the people you love and giving them the autonomy to defend themselves. Because we all know that Naruto is a major softie, and that major softie side is what made Kawaki look to him as a father figure. And therefore, possibly after Naruto is released from the Daikokuten, he embraces Kawaki and says, it's okay, but I can defend myself. And in actuality, the more that I'm thinking about it, the more I see this as a legitimate possibility. Like, Kawaki believes he seals Boruto in the Daikokuten, and then Boruto is able to nullify the abilities of the Daikokuten to a certain degree and get Naruto and Hinata out of the Daikokuten. And then after Boruto returns to the Earth Dimension with his parents, Naruto is the person to be like, you guys are brothers, stop fighting. And considering the fact that the majority of Boruto's manga prior to Naruto's sealing has been about Naruto trying to be a father figure to two very different boys, and with how much everybody loves Naruto being a good father figure, that would actually be a pretty good twist. But the long and short of it is, I don't know. But what I do know is that while Boruto could access the Daikokuten unless he can nullify the timeless aspect of the Daikokuten, that's a very bad idea. And thus, if anybody tries to tell you that because Boruto can hop between dimensions using Flying Thunder God that he's going to access the Daikokuten to save his family, send them this video. Because where time no ticky, things get sticky. But what do you guys think? How do you think Naruto? But what do you guys think? How do you believe that Naruto and Hinata will be saved from the Daikokuten, if they'll be saved at all? Tell me in the comments down below, and while you're down there, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. Listen, all I'm gonna say is it's a good thing the Daikokuten is a timeless dimension, because if you gave me 3 years to hang out with Hinata in a separate dimension, the Uzumaki family's gonna be a little bit bigger by the time we get back.